listening to Coffee and Conversation with Recovery Advocate Network, the nonprofit organization that strives to address the staggering disparity in resource availability for individuals suffering from mental health disorders, processing disorders, addictions, trauma healing, and sexual identity challenges. Together, we strive to end the stigma associated with these challenges so that true healing can begin. Welcome back to Coffee and Conversation with Recovery Advocate Network. I'm your host, Ange, and I welcome you to episode number 73. So, what do we talk about? My favorite topics, leadership and culture. Who do we meet with today? We met with Coach Kitch. Phenomenal conversation about his inspiring journey from being expelled from school in the 3rd grade to becoming a college coach, launching his own business, the Edge Leadership Academy, and pursuing his PhD. He emphasized the significance of leadership and culture in achieving success and shared his 5 C's of leadership: character, consistency, commitment, creativity, and one of my favorites, communication. Coach Kitchens believes leadership is built, not born, and aims to empower others to become leaders in their respective fields. During our conversation, we delved into the topics of leadership, character, and cultivating strong teams. We underscored the importance of vulnerability, admitting mistakes, and apologizing as a leader. We also stressed the value of getting to know team members as individuals, or as I say, as human beings, and understanding their personal communication styles. David shared his insights on creating a positive team culture and the significance of consistency and documentation in problem solving. A little bit more about David, or as we like to refer to him as Coach Kitch. David, Coach Kitch, is the founder of Edge Leadership Academy. He is a former Division I coach turned entrepreneur and a PhD candidate with a master's degree in sports psychology. Outside the classroom, he has a decade of experience building leaders, cultures, and mindsets at the highest levels of sports and business. He has authored 3 books, including an international bestseller. As an award-winning speaker, consultant, and coach, Coach Kitch is trusted by over 100 CEOs, coaches, and high performers to help them lead and win in business, athletics, and most importantly, in life. As a reminder, at the heart of Rand's mission is the urgent need to support individuals dedicated to the recovery journey, but facing barriers due to insurance challenges. With your help, we are on the verge of funding our first set of grants and providing crucial financial assistance to those in need. Regardless of the size, your contribution is crucial in changing and saving lives. We're so grateful to have you as a part of our community. So with that, please remember our 3 C's of engagement. The first C is click. That means click the subscribe, like, love, follow, share, whatever it is on the platform you're listening or watching us on. And also consider clicking the link to our website and the donate button on there to make a difference in someone's lives today. So that website is www.recoveryadvocatenetwork.org. Okay, the second C is commit. Commit to staying for the full episode and consider all the possible ways you can grow your own personal leadership style, learn from others and how they work best, and learn how to become your best self. My favorite topics. Okay, finally, that last C. Well, of course, it is your coffee or whatever your drink of choice is. And so fill up your coffee, sit back, relax, and let's get started.
Hey.
How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
I am good. It's so funny. I was checking my phone to check what the date of the week was. And I'm like, how can I not remember? Is it the 24th, the 25th? Are we in April or are we in May, Coach Kitchens?
How about it? Things start happening fast.
Right? Oh my gosh. Okay, I'm going to put this in now since I took the moment to look awkward while you came on and stared at my phone. So, hey, let's chat you are such a pro at this. You know what's crazy is I have no fear of speaking in public. It's one of the things I thank
Right.
God for all the time. But every once in a while I interview a guest and I'm a little nervous because I'm intimidated by, you know what it is? I'm intimidated by the fact that I see they've accomplished so much that I'm also so aligned with and so passionate about. And so I get so excited. And then I'm like, okay, so I want to hear all these secrets and I want to learn all this stuff from them. And I don't want to look stupid myself because maybe if Coach Kitchens can't talk one day, he could say, hey, I know somebody else who got, all of these things. So I was laughing as I was like, why am I getting butterflies in my stomach?
No, I am the most laid back person. We are going to have fun. I show up scars and all.
Yes.
So if we stutter, we mess up, we're just going to let it rip. Let's just have fun.
Score. I do that too. Actually, one of my guests recently, she was laughing at me because I was looking for something in her book and I was like, okay, never mind. I just can't find it at all. And she afterwards, she's like, I love you. She said so many other people would have been embarrassed by that. And you were just like, you know what? I give up.
I'm human. We're human. It's it's funny when I listened to my old podcasts, like when I first started hosting my own or when I first started being on them, I was kind of like that. Like you could tell it was like I was uptight, right? And now like we did so many. I mean, I'm at the point now where I'm just like, listen, I am who
Love
I am.
it.
Like I don't pretend. I'm not gonna put on a front. Like let's just have fun. Let's. It's two people having a conversation. Let's just enjoy it and learn from each other, and let's move on.
I'm so stoked. That is exactly how I think it should be. And so we will roll with that. Also, I realize I need to work with Nikki and our thing because I think we're forgetting to remind people that a requirement of this podcast is at the very end, you have to share your favorite motivational quote. So,
Okay.
So I needed, in the very beginning of the podcast, I was really on top of that. And now that, have you ever read the book Who Not How?
I don't think I have.
Okay.
No.
It's one of a gazillion great leadership books. And it talks about bringing people on your team for some of the things that it doesn't necessarily need to be you. It can be someone else. And sometimes it's somebody else who has skills that you want to have one day, but you don't, or individuals who maybe they don't want to be in front of the camera, but they want to donate to the mission. And so I've added a couple of those amazing people. And then I forgot, I need to tell them. It's really important to remind the guests they have to have their favorite motivational quote.
I love it. I'll make one up on the
spot. Okay, great. That's exactly what I want it to be like. Okay. Well, why don't we just kick in and get started? How do you feel about that? Let's do it.
Love it. Ready to roll. Absolutely.
Alrighty, listeners. Well, I am super stoked today to have Coach Kitchen. And I want to call him Coach Kitchens because here's the secret. I was only ever in one sport in high school. Now, in my adult life, I raced Ironmans and stuff. But in high school, I was in cross country. The only reason I was in cross country is because I needed to letter in something in order to get my Air Force scholarship. Okay. And in my high school, if you ran cross country, even if you came in last, I know this because I almost always came in last, you still got a letter. And so that was my only opportunity to call someone I knew really by coach. So I just am stoked to call you Coach Kitchens. And now I'm going to stop talking and allow you to introduce yourself to the audience.
Oh man, that's a great story. First off, I love that you found the little loophole there. I'm just gotta grab my letter here and move on. I'm with it. Listen, hey, sometimes it's about working smarter, not harder.
Yep, absolutely.
But no, as you said, my name is David Kitchen. Everybody calls me Coach Kitch, so I'm perfectly okay with Coach. I'm the founder and president of Edge Leadership Academy, which is what I do now, but it's really chapter 2 of my career. And so I'm sure we'll dive into it, but I spent 10 years as a college coach, was fortunate to spend the majority of that time at the Division I level. And then during the pandemic, made what everybody else thought was a head scratching move and decided to walk away from a contract extension and launch my own business. And, it's taken me on this roller coaster that has led to just unbelievable relationships, unbelievable impact, and just a life that I really didn't know was possible for myself. And so I'm really excited and just fortunate to be able to do things like this and get to do, I joke about it and I say, I'm at a point in my life now where I do dope things with dope people. And so I'm just excited to be here and be able to share a little knowledge and talk some leadership, talk some culture, and talk life.
I love that. And by the way, I will be stealing it. And I will, first off, it's going to be recorded so you can reference everyone back. See, she said it was my quote. She stole it. It's online. And I will give you credit for that. But I love that too. You know, what my life quote is: you only live once, you only have one opportunity to build a legacy, make an impact, make it count. And my hashtag, be brave, be badass, is all about doing things like what you did. I just believe everyone has their own personal badass. And many of us oftentimes are just afraid to be brave, to step out of our comfort zone and do those moves that are head scratching moves for everyone else, that we're like, yeah, no, this is who I am as a human. That's hard.
Yeah, it is. And you know what? I think they're so beautiful. Like I love the fact that I made some moves in my life that sent me on a trajectory that allow me to now empower other people to make those moves. Like I think that is so cool to me, that I was able to find those opportunities to do exactly what you just said. Right, take the mask off. Like stop being what in the box that everybody else had for me, and just do it my way. And once I realized that, I realized how freeing it was. And then I saw so many other things come with it because I was passionate about what I was doing, whether it was coaching athletes or now coaching clients and CEOs and being in boardrooms and talking to management and talking to leaders. Like all of those things to me come full circle, and they all come from those moments, right? And it's a quote, and I'm throw a bunch out for you today, but one of my favorites is life comes down to what you do with shaky hands. Like those moments where
Oh,
you
I got
know it's right
chills.
in your heart, but you're terrified. Yeah, and I wholeheartedly believe that. Like it's about following that little voice in your head that keeps you up at night. Like that's what this life is about.
Yeah, yeah. I just got chills. And, I think just thinking about your transition in your career is oftentimes, I do a lot of mentoring at Georgia Tech, and I talk to these graduating seniors who think, oh my gosh, I have to pick the perfect job for my first job because it will lay out the rest of my life. And actually, when I say that, if you pull up my LinkedIn, I've been all over the place. I like totally bust that myth for people. And so do you. And I think, having the moment to say, hey, I tried this. Yeah, I learned some lessons from it. And I'm going to take those things and I'm going to do this, which is great. So I see that you're a PhD candidate at this age, which I was looking because I've already learned a lot about you and I know how successful you've been in both on the field and off the field, I guess we can say, or off the shelf and on the bookshelf with the books that you've written. And so I thought, wow, he's made a commitment at this stage because he's already successful. And yet he's like, hey, I want to get this PhD. I want to continue this learning. Tell us a little bit about that journey.
Yeah, I think, first off, to piggyback off of your original point, like when I came out of school, a lot of people don't know this. My first year out of school, I sold IT systems. So I didn't get right into coaching. It took me a year to actually make that decision to follow my passion, and do that. And so, yeah, the PhD studies and where I'm at now, it's one of those things where our whole company is built on the mantra of built, not born. And I just don't believe that success and leadership are defined by, you were innately given these gifts. Like I think there's, character traits or whatever, but so much of it is built. And as I was going through my career, and I had this sports psychology master's degree, and then I started to do the leadership stuff, I was like, man, I really want to understand this at a deep, deep level. I want to get to a point where I completely understand it. And then not only that, being an African American man, being an African American business owner, there was a piece of me that said, you know what? I'm going to go slap a PhD behind my
Yes.
name because I know that other people are going to look at that and be like, wait, you did all these things and you got your doctorate. And it's like, yeah, you know what I did because I can, because I want to be a role model for other people. And so there was selfish, desires behind it, but there was also a piece of it that I was raised by a single mother, and my mom and my grandmother always joked that I should be a doctor. And so this was kind of my little like, here you go.
I think at this stage in my life, I'm just going to be frank. And actually, a lot of Georgia Tech people listen to this. So if they ever want to give me an honorary doctorate, I will take that. And that will be the only way I get a doctor before or a PhD after my name. It will only be if it's an honorary one. So I admire that as well. You know, I went back to school at 29 as a single mom with a special needs 2-year-old to get my engineering degree. And people thought I was crazy at that point. Best decision in investing in myself and then being able to invest in other people. So, what is your PhD thesis on?
So I'm exploring the relationship between identity and habit formation,
Oh,
specifically in like successful people, and how the identities that we hold actually have a serious impact on how resilient we are and how much we're able to apply those habits in different contexts. I just recently read some research about like what COVID did to people and how it disrupted patterns, and like the people that were able to stick to their healthy habits and quote unquote successful habits through COVID, the majority of them identified with those habits on a deeper level. Like there was something in their past what we all believe it is, which is goal pursuit, right? We all think if I can assign a goal to this, then I'll be able to achieve it. But it's the way that I put it very simply is like, it's great to say I want to lose 20 pounds so that I can be healthy. It's even better to say I want to lose 20 pounds so that I can play with my grandkids. Like now you're identifying with it on a deeper level, right? And so that's what my dissertation is going to be all about, exploring that relationship between habit formation and the identities that we hold for ourselves.
okay. Well, I want an advance copy of the book when the book is released. And since you don't get anything you don't ask for, I'm asking for that now, and I want the autograph as well. Just
Got it.
throwing it
You
out
got
there.
it.
That's
Done deal.
yes, score.
Done deal.
As a reminder, this is being recorded.
I love it. I love it. Hold me accountable.
Yes, exactly. Okay, so you talk a lot about, well, one, you and I have so many things in common, and one of them is we literally bleed. I was thinking the other day, that phrase blood, sweat, and tears for stuff. I thought, why do we still
Mhm.
say blood? Like, can't we just say sweat and tears for things? But whatever. Literally bleed leadership and culture and getting to know humans as humans. I just transitioned to be COO of a new company here back in Atlanta. And much of the reason I was hired and much of the things I also speak to is exactly this: the importance of teams, team dynamics, and culture. So, okay, I can imagine where you got part of that from your D1 coaching, but let's dig a little bit into this because you also, I mean, it is all over everything. This is what your brand is, and I absolutely love it. So dig in and tell us more about it.
Yeah, there's no doubt that the brand is built around leadership. Our quote is, like I said, leaders are built, not born. And so much of it comes from my own experiences. It comes from the fact that, like I said, I grew up without a father, grew up with a single mother, and all the traditional things that people would say would lend themselves to leadership. I didn't have. I was kicked out of school in third grade. Like, you know what I mean? That was my first role in leadership was leading my household at 10 years
I want
old,
to
11
interject real
years old.
quick.
And so,
You talk about
yeah,
resilience later. So, listeners, I want you to hear that again. Kicked out of school in third grade, getting his PhD now. Okay, carry on. So, you were at home and you were
there's no
running the
doubt.
house.
Yeah, I was running the house. My stepfather struggled with addiction. And so it early on, it lit a fire in me. Like I wanted to know what it meant to lead, and I wanted to know what that looked like. And when I got to the college world and I got to the athletics world in particular, I was surrounded by all these high performing individuals, coaches, players. I mean, you're talking about an industry. Oftentimes, let me back up a little bit. Oftentimes, we get caught up in the athletes, right? And don't get me wrong, they're tremendous, and we wouldn't have jobs as coaches if we didn't have them. But there's also this group of people behind the scenes, and it's the coaching staffs, and it's the athletic administrators, and it's the support staff, whether they're the athletic trainers, etc. You're talking about people that when they apply for a job, there's literally thousands of applicants for every single job.
Wow.
And so you're talking about the best of the best at what they do, right? And our head coach when I was at UNLV used to always tell us on Saturdays before game day, you are in this room because you are one of the 148 best coaches in the country.
Wow.
That's why you're here. Now let's go do our job, right? And so again, I got around these high performers, and yet not all of them were leaders. There was a difference. And you start to realize that. And so I wanted to explore that more and more. So I started to build mentorship programs, and I started to build internship curriculums and things like that at the programs that I was a part of. And I started to see the relationship between leadership and culture. And I started to see how much, when we had those leaders that we invested in, how much better our culture was. And so there was so much there for me to unravel and start to go down the rabbit hole on. And then it all hit me in the face. I had a young man who was the best athlete I have ever coached in my life. He's making a lot of money playing his sport now. But he was also the best leader I had ever coached. And when we talk about leadership, I use the term room tilter, like people that come in a room and everybody just gravitates towards them. Like you can feel
I
it,
love
right?
that.
So to me, like that's leadership, right? Is that
Yes.
room tilter magnetism. Because it's not necessarily the loudest person in
No.
the room. It's just that person that you can feel it and people get pulled towards him. And he was one of those. And he came in my office and he said, "Coach, can I talk to you for a second?" I said, "Absolutely." He sat down and it all just came out. Like it was all this frustration. And he said, "I've been the best player on every team I've ever been on. And everybody's always telling me to lead, but nobody ever taught me how." And I was
Bingo.
like, oh, light bulb moment, light bulb moment. Like if this guy feels this way, how many other people do? And so that's really where it all came from. And that's when I really started to go down the rabbit hole. And so one of the first things I did is I went to explore, what actually makes a good leader. And so I had this experience. I had 10 years of experience around kids and around athletes and coaches and things. So I wrote down some of the best leaders that I had been around and what those things about them were. And then what I did is I compared that to the psychology research. And I came across these 5 commonalities. I came across these common threads. And the entrepreneurship god smiled down on me and said, "Hey, guess what? They all start with C. So now you can market this."
Oh, yes.
And so that's where the 5 C's came from, right? And so what I found was that great leaders all start with character. That's what that magnetism is. That's what that room tilter feeling is around people, is that character. And so from there, once you know exactly who you are and who you're not, you can start to be consistent, because as humans, we operate off of pattern recognition. We want people that are consistent to be our leaders. And so now you can build that consistency, which is where you see the resiliency, where you see the habits that great leaders have, all those things. And then next is their ability to commit to something, their ability to commit to a vision, their ability to commit to an organization, their ability to commit to the people, right? And the culture, not the results. They understand inherently that the results will come
Right.
if they commit to those things. And then from there is the one that we almost synonymously use, which is creativity. And when we talk about a Super Bowl winning quarterback, nobody says he managed his team to a Super Bowl. We say he led them, right? When we talk about great CEOs that pivoted during the pandemic, nobody says they managed their company through a crisis. They led them through crisis. So creativity to us in the English language is synonymous with leadership. And that's where great leaders thrive, is those figure it out moments, right? Because they've done so much work on the back end that they're ready to see around that corner and make great vision, mission, and value driven decisions with limited information. And then the last piece is the C that everybody's always waiting for, which is communication, right? Their ability to communicate at a really high level to a wide variety of people. So what I found was those 5 C's. And from there, I built a curriculum. And the original curriculum only had 5 presentations. It had 5 modules, and it was one on each of the C's. And then as I continued to dive down the rabbit hole, I was like, there's so many nuances here, and there's so many skills. And so it developed into this full-fledged program that we have now, in this full-fledged leadership philosophy that we now teach in the corporate sector. We teach it in athletics. We teach it individually. I mean, it just applies everywhere. But it all sparked from, my childhood, and then that conversation. Like, you look back on your life and it's like a hallway, right? Like there's doors, and each door kind of has a little nugget in there for you that lead you to where you're supposed to be. So that's where it came from. And now where I'm at is just arming as many people as possible with those skills. Because whether you're leading a company, or you're leading your family, or you're trying to lead in your community or your faith community, or whatever you're involved in, we're all called in one way or another to be a leader. And we need more people that can answer that call.
Absolutely. And, I love, when I was building my first company, I was so proud. We had our Series C, and the investment team, we had no turnover. We had basically 100% NPS from our customers, Net Promoter Score, for the listeners who aren't familiar. And our employees were just like, that was our calling card, white glove customer service. And and that's what we're building at this next company here. And I have talked a lot. I wrote a blog once about why it's so important to focus on culture as a startup from the very beginning. And it's really hard for teams to understand that those 5 C's, oftentimes each of those C's in and of itself, it's hard to see the ROI on it. It doesn't show up as an ARR, an annual recurring revenue on the balance sheet, right? It doesn't show up there, but it does. It shows up in all those other things. It shows up on the amount of time your team members stay there, how productive they are. You're not paying to retrain people. You're not losing. What I used to say too is, you're talking about leaders, and I think about leaders, not managers, and leaders too. We can think about 2 different perspectives of those. But in either one of those scenarios, oftentimes people have done well in their role, and so they get a promotion to a title of a manager. Okay, this does not make them a leader or even a manager. And some people
say that louder for the people in the back.
Exactly.
Say that louder for the people in the back.
This does not make them a leader or a manager. And so as leaders, and I will call both of us strong leaders, is our responsibility to constantly model the behaviors that we think. So I think it all ties back to that initial character, the first C that you have. Because quite frankly, I think if you don't have that first C, the rest of them, if you don't have any of the C's, right, if any of them, they're all paramount, but that first C is really critical.
It's the foundation. And we say in strength and conditioning or in fitness, you can't out-train a bad diet. Like, that's what we always told our athletes. And the same is true of character. You can't outrun it because it shows up in so many key areas. It shows up in your habits. Your people are watching. How are you spending your most valuable resource? Your time. And people are looking at that. And then it shows up in your social interactions. How do you treat people that can do nothing for you? How do you treat people when you're having a bad day? How do you treat people when you're having a good day? It shows up in your social circle. What type of people do you surround yourself with? What does your immediate team look like? And then from there, it shows up in your self-regulatory behaviors. How do you handle stress? How do you handle success? How do you handle adversity? All those things, because success has buried just as many people as failure.
Oh, absolutely.
Right? Because it doesn't hide anything. It gives you more confidence to act like who you actually are. And so your people are constantly looking. So when your character shows up in all those key metrics, I mean, we could sit down and translate all of those to business and to where they show up in an office setting or in a decision-making setting. All of them are KPIs. All of those are things that impact your bottom line, whether it's employee retention, whether it's customer retention, whether it's your strategic decisions from a high level standpoint, whether it's your HR practices. I mean, they show up. And so if you don't have that character piece, everything else kind of crumbles, right? If you have character and maybe one other of the C's, we can work with that. I'll help you build the rest of your toolbox. I got you. I can't teach character.
Nope.
That's an intentional decision between you and you. And so that piece has to be intact. And then from there, we build it out, right? But at the end of the day, leadership, and again, I probably shouldn't say this as a leadership consultant because it pays my bills, but leadership is simple. It's not easy. It's simple, right? They're 2 different things. It's about being somebody worth following, going somewhere worth going for a reason that matters. That's it.
Yep.
If you do that, you're off to the races.
Yep, absolutely. I want to share an example of something that happened this week of one of my low leadership moments, but how it played out and how it ties to character. And I'm not sharing this to toot me on the horn. What I'm sharing is a reminder that every team member is watching what you're doing. Okay. So I am in the C-suite. I'm the only female in the C-suite. The rest are men. Okay. I'll play the stage. We have this busy day. Meetings are overlapping. People are late for meetings. You know, it's chaos. We're getting frustrated. Stress is high. We are a startup, right? We need to do these things. Okay. We have this meeting suddenly that the person who's really supposed to be leading it is now triple booked himself into another meeting. And this is 3 p.m. in the day. And listeners, I will share with you, oftentimes the way we behave about certain situations has nothing to do with that current situation. it has to do with a lot of underlying things that feed up to it. So I always, when I see someone behave a certain way, I think, okay, what's underneath the hood? Okay, so here we are, and we're sitting, and I'm getting frustrated. And in front of my teams, I'm totally like trashing this person who's like supposed to be in here, trash talking him, right? And I'm sitting there thinking, I'm like, that is so unprofessional. And so he comes out of the meeting and he joins, and he has a sheepish look on his face because he knows we're all sitting there waiting for him, right? And we're all ticked, right? And I said, okay, I'm going to use a different name, although he'll probably listen to this and laugh. I'm going to say, Sam, I have to admit to you, I was just trash talking you in front of the team. It was very unprofessional. I'm very sorry that I did that. And to move forward, how do we get your calendar so it's not triple booked? And we did a fist bump. But what I want the listeners to hear as leaders, having character and being willing to say, I screwed up, I'm sorry. I could have waited and just said that to him separately. I said it in front of my team members because I want to model the behavior of saying when you make a mistake and apologizing. And I got a Slack. So if listeners, if you don't know what Slack is, a communication thing, like a text message, but a Slack. I got a Slack from one of my team members, and he said, I've never seen anyone take the high road the way you did earlier with Sam and the way you apologized. I appreciate getting to see that and you leading the way with that. That moment will forever be how I want to conduct myself professionally, not perfectly, but humbly. Every single individual. So if you're a leader and you're thinking, I don't want to look bad, I don't want to make a mistake, these people aren't going to think highly of me, etc. Leadership, especially in COVID, you think about in resilience and shifting and transitioning, leadership is sometimes sitting in a room with a whole bunch of other smart people that you hired because they're smart and saying, I don't know the next step. Let's collaborate and figure it out.
Man, that is a masterclass right there too, because there has been research to suggest that two of the most pivotal moments in leadership. So when you're first, they call it emerging leadership. So within your first 6 months, we'll just round it. But there's psychology research that suggests two of the most pivotal moments are how a leader handles their first opportunity for vulnerability, which is what you were just talking about right there, right? Your ability to be humble, your ability to admit a mistake, your ability to ask for help. All those things are examples of vulnerability, right? Could be setting a boundary,
Absolutely.
right? Those are all examples of vulnerability. But that's situation number one. Scenario number two is how an emerging leader handles their first conflict. Those two situations, if you manage those properly and if you navigate them properly, will set you up for success. If you navigate them poorly, it's really hard to come back from. And the analogy that I always use is it's like burning a cake. Like once the cake is burnt, it's burnt. You can't unburn it.
You can't put
You
more
can always turn the heat up. You can't put more ice. It's always going to be burnt. And so for leaders that are stepping into those roles, right, it's not trying to put on that Superman cape or that Superwoman cape. It's stepping in and doing exactly what you said, knowing your people and allowing them to step in and be your backstop, step in and do their job at a really high level. Your job, the higher you climb on the organizational chart, the less it's about you. The more it's about serving the people around you. And so your job becomes, how do I make your job easier? What resources do you need from me? What training, what support, etc.? What doors do you need me to open? How do I make my team more efficient and more effective? And that requires you to be extremely humble. It requires you to be self-aware, and it requires you to be able to be vulnerable and say, hey, listen, I don't know how we're going to figure this out, but let's storyboard it. Let's get on the whiteboard here. Let's throw ideas. Let's problem solve as a team. And that's the key to it all, right? So those two scenarios are key. And right there, you handle them really well, right? You handle both of those really well. And so kudos to you as a leader.
Thank you. I'm going to say that. I'll listen to that if I get frustrated, which as people forget, right?
Put it in the cookie jar.
Exactly. Yeah, I'll put it. Actually, I will. I'll put it in my gratitude jar tonight. That will be my gratitude for the day. Yeah, and also just commenting on that, the reason I just said what I just said, like what the times I'm having a hard time, is that sometimes it's hard to remember that leaders struggle. Leaders doubt themselves. We have hard times. We're like, did I make the right decision in this way? I mean, I think And myself, I've become, as I've progressed in my career, I've stopped the middle of the night replaying everything that I did and thinking how I could do it differently, and just said, okay, it's done. We're moving forward, kind of thing. You know what I mean? I've stopped that hamster wheel. But leaders need affirmation and they need reminders. And for me, when I used to have an office, and all the awards and plaques that I'd gotten, I had it in there in this little small office. And it wasn't so other people could see it. I called it my I love me wall. And I grew up also with a lot of adverse childhood experiences. I have an ACE score of 8. And so I overcame a lot to get to where I came. And so, you know what? I need to, every once in a while, look at my I love me wall and remember I've done hard things. I've accomplished things. I've got this. I can do it. And when I do that, I remember that my team also needs their I love me wall, their reminders of those things that tie into maybe even some of the commitment and some of the other things as a leader as you're doing to those team members, for those team members, with the team members.
There's there's no doubt, and honestly, I mean, transparently, that's something I really struggled with, right? I'm my own worst critic. I have a standard for myself that I set that I expect myself to meet, and so I can be extremely hard on myself. That being said, I also know myself well enough to know that I don't need a pat on the butt, right? Even from myself, but my team might.
Yep.
And I, early on in my career, I really struggled to give that. And then I realized, oh, I'm withholding something that could actually be someone else's superpower. That's selfish. I'm the bottleneck in my team right now. By me not giving them affirmation and approval, now I'm not going to hold your hand, right? But at the same time, by not giving that approval, by not giving that affirmation that they did a good job, I'm withholding a resource from them. And that's not fair. And that's not right. And that's not my job as a leader. So just because I operate this way doesn't mean that my dysfunction needs to get passed on to my team, right? And I'm at a point now in my life where I can call it dysfunction and I'm working through it. It's funny. It's funny because admittedly, my therapist tells me all the time, you got to be kinder to yourself. You have to remove the cape for yourself and have that I love you moment. And so I think as a leader, though, we have to be self-aware enough to know, just like as parents, like we can't pass our dysfunctions on to our children, just like we can't pass them on to our team. And so we have to be extremely self-aware about some of the things that maybe we need or don't need that might be different from the people around us. And then from there, we have to model it, right? It's exactly what you said. I'm a firm believer behaviors are both caught and taught, and it has to be both.
I love that. I love that way you put that caught and taught. I'm going to remember that. Absolutely. One of the things that I've learned over my career leading and building teams is that it ties back to the 5 love languages. Okay. And also this idea of I'm so passionate about individuals getting to know each other as humans. So I work really hard. We have a new employee starting the week before next, and I've already done a slideshow to the rest of the company showing fun photos of her and her background and things like this, because I believe people need to get to know individuals as humans. So a couple of ways you can expand this is have individuals write down what's the best way to communicate with me. How do I accept, how do I want to feel appreciated? I have someone on my team who, in my conversations, when I first started my new job 2 months ago, I spent quality time with every single employee of the company, one-on-one, asking these questions. And one was like, I really like praise. I really need that for me. And I'm like, noted. I have another team member who's very shy and gets really embarrassed, but they still need it in a different way. So I'm coming up with unique ways to give it to them. But I think the key there is taking a moment to get to know humans as humans, which I know ties to the psychology part. So can you talk some about what kind of lessons, or how do you help leaders learn how to do that? Because I feel like oftentimes they think they're too busy to slow down.
Mm-hmm. No, it's KYP, right? Know your personnel. That's one of the first things that you learn as a football player when you're really young, is to identify who's on the field. So it's KYP. So I take that with me everywhere. And I think it's something that you have to realize, if you're not intentional about it, it's not only about you learning how to best navigate that relationship, it's also about you building trust.
Yes.
It's also about you building a situation where you're able to then hold people accountable to things. And so if you're not, I look at trust like a bank account, right? So the more we make deposits, and some of those deposits are naturally occurring, right? Some of those are shared adversity, shared success, etc., right? But some of them are really intentional. And it's things where, exactly what you said, I'm too busy, but I'm going to make time. Because what you're telling that person is that I'm willing to put my stuff aside for you because you matter. And then when you have to hold that person accountable, no matter what words come out of your mouth, if you've made the appropriate deposits, what that person is going to hear is, we have high standards here. I'm holding you to these high standards because I believe in you.
Yep.
And I want you to be a part of the success that we're going to have as a company. In order for us to do that, and in order for you to be a part of that success, I need you to do X, Y, Z, and I need you to do it in the following time frame. What resources do you need from me? Now, the exact verbiage that you use could be very different. It could be about anything. You could be talking about sales numbers. You could be talking about compliance. You can be talking about whatever. It doesn't matter. That's what they're going to hear as long as you did the work up front. If you don't, then what they hear is, I'm shaming you, I'm demeaning you, I'm guilting you, I'm projecting onto you, I'm out of touch with our team. None of those things are phrases that we want to hear our employees thinking about us as leaders, right? So do the work up front. Do the work up front. Get to know them. And then again, like you said, you have to know how people want to be praised. Some people want to be called out in front of the team and said, hey, look what Susie did. Look what she did. Look at the extra effort that she put in. There's other people that will be mortified by that.
Yep.
And they just want to put their head down and work. But it's your job to know so that you can get the best out of them, and so that you can properly, here's another little quote for you, properly praise their process. So I'll say that again, properly praise their process. Everybody's process is different. It is your job as a leader to figure out what their process is and then praise it along the way to get the results that you want.
Oh, my heart is exploding. I absolutely love this. Okay, so a couple of questions I have for you. One, in coaching and business, and leadership teams, and we'll just use maybe like CEOs or whatever example, what are a few things that keep you up at night, if anything keeps you up at night? But you get the analogy I'm trying to say. So that is one thing. And then the second question is, I don't know, maybe share a vulnerability moment of a moment you kind of made a mistake and the lesson you learned from it.
Yeah, definitely. The first one, what keeps me up at night is people that think that culture is a pizza party. People that think that culture is a day at the water park. Culture is every day because it matters. That's what culture is. Culture is a daily investment. And to anybody out there, and I will die on this hill. To anyone out there that doesn't believe me, I say this: invest in your culture or get beat by somebody who does. It's that simple. It is a zero-sum game when it comes to that. And so that's something that definitely keeps me up at night. And I think the second thing is environments where people don't feel like they can be authentic. That really bothers me.
Yeah.
Like I really don't like the feeling of being in it, because I've been there in the coaching world. I've been there in the business world. It really bothers me when there's scenarios that go on, whatever the culture is, where people feel like they have to wear a mask and not show up authentically. I think you're stunting growth and you're leaving so much productivity and so much money and so much happiness on the table. And I think the life is just too short for that. So that's probably what keeps me up at night. As far as a vulnerability moment, man, I just messed up recently with my team. Just recently. I had a scenario where, and I'm sure you can relate to this as an executive. It was one of those days where everything was just going sideways and you felt like the world was crashing down. And, as an entrepreneur, I signed up for that.
Yep.
Okay. I have to be aware of that and I have to be okay with that. And what happened was my business partner had been in communication with one of our clients, and I didn't understand the full conversation. And I jumped in. I was CC'd on an email in the middle of a conversation, and I didn't need to be involved. And I jumped in, and he had already fixed it. And so I made the situation worse, and I looked out of touch as a leader. And so I immediately called him, and I said, hey, man, that's on me. I did that because I felt out of control in all these other areas and things that were going on. And so I tried to take control of something that really wasn't mine to take control of. And so I apologize for that. I stepped on your toes. I should have trusted you to handle it. and we've moved past it, right? But I had to be able to have that conversation with him. And another one, I mean, I missed a meeting with our operations guy, and he texted me and said, "Hey, that's the second meeting you've missed." And I called him and I said, "Hey, you know what? You're 100% right, and that's on me, man. I need to do a better job with my calendar. And from now on, every Wednesday, we meet on Fridays. Every Wednesday, you will have a message from me confirming the meeting, and I'll make sure that that's there." And it has been. And so it's your ability to look at your people and say, "I'm not perfect. There's things going on, and I mess up. I make mistakes. I'm highly competitive. That gets in my way at times. Like, I'm aware of those things, but I also have to take accountability for them and then address them." And I think that's where we drop the ball sometimes as leaders. Is sometimes we sit back and we say, "Well, I am who I am," and it's like that's not an answer.
No, that is not acceptable.
Does my competitiveness make me special? Absolutely. Is it a big part of why I'm able to do some of the things that I've done and able to do what I'm doing now? Yeah, definitely it is. But it also can be the thing that gets me killed if I'm not careful. It also can be the thing that drives my team away from me. It's also the thing that can drive clients away from me. Like, I have to be aware of that. And so I need to work on it. And that means me fighting my, individualistic nature at times and saying, "Hey, I need to take a step back here and make sure that I'm supporting the people around me and not so worried about getting things done my way." Right. And so again, it all comes down to self-awareness, and it comes down to your ability to admit that you're wrong. And my players used to joke with me all the time because they said, "Coach, you always say that's on me, even if it's not on you." And I'm like, "Yeah, because that's what a leader
Yes.
does. Like, that's what it is. Like, even if it's not my fault." I mean, I had a staff of 7 coaches, right? So if we're out on the field and a drill is set up incorrectly, was I the one that set that drill up? Absolutely not. Was I the one that printed out the drawing of the drill? No, but they don't need to know that. And so for me, when I'm in front of the team, I say, "Hey, that's on me. That's my fault," right? Now, when we have our staff debrief later, now I want to get to the bottom of, was it a lack of knowledge? Because if it was, then that's on me. I didn't give you the proper resources. Was it a lack of understanding, meaning you didn't know what success looked like in setting this drill up? Again, that's on me as a leader. Or was it a lack of effort? That one's on you. We can address that in different ways, but I want to figure out what caused the problem. I'm not worried about the problem itself. It's over. I took responsibility for it, whether it was my fault or not. What I'm worried about is, how are we going to move forward?
So, a couple of thoughts that I have. I love that. One, I want to go back to when you jumped in on the email. And what I want to go to, though, is a comment you said when you were apologizing. You said, "I was feeling out of control in all these other areas. So I picked an area I thought I could take control over." And that's just another example of, oftentimes it's something underneath, it's something completely unrelated. And I just believe, as humans, the more we understand that human nature, that happens, and instead of reacting like really brash to that exact thing, pausing down and doing what you said in the second part was digging down into like an opportunity that didn't go well, the on the field practice, and digging into it, maybe using your 5 whys and saying, "Why did this happen? Why did we do," digging down to what the root is, because the root, figuring that out. I think people are in such a hurry to move on to the next thing, or to blame someone, or to, do all of these things. We don't pause enough to get to what the root is. And if we can get to the root, and this ties back to conversations about addiction, about habits, about a lot of things, right? If we can get to what that root is and figure out how to master and be successful, like you said, if it's laziness, whatever you said at the very end, if you get to that root and then you deal with that challenge, that's how you and your team are just going to be rock stars.
For sure. And there's simple tools, right? One of the tools that we use all the time are before and after action reviews. Every single thing that we do as a team, if there's a new product launch, if we're getting into a new engagement with a client, if we're onboarding somebody or something, if we're onboarding a new software, whatever it is, we sit down prior, and generally it's virtually. Sometimes we get the opportunity to sit down in person, and we whiteboard, and it's okay. What does success look like to us?
Yes.
Like, what does perfect look like? Okay, next question. what's our minimally viable product? What is the bare minimum that we can provide here that's going to give us an opportunity to stay in business? It's going to keep us out of jail, and it's not going to make us go bankrupt. What does that look like? Right.
What will
And
kill
then we
us
start to
next, and
figure
how do
out,
we deal
yeah,
with it?
what will kill us next? Exactly. And then we ask who or what has already overcome adversities like this? Who's already done a project similar to this? And then we ask, okay, what are some of the unforeseen? Like, what are some of the weird, like, world-stopping scenarios that can happen? Right? COVID. What are some of the things that could pop
COVID
up
can
that could
never happen.
really cause us to fail?
Right.
Right? And so we do that, and then we assign action items to each of those for us as a team before we launch. Like, okay, I'm going to be the one to go and dig up all the information on other people that have launched similar products or other people that have onboarded the similar software. Okay, I'm going to be the one to look at all the unforeseen circumstances, etc. We paint that picture before. And then after the launch or after the onboarding, we meet again and we bring out those notes from the first time and we say, okay, what did we actually get? What did we actually accomplish, right? Where was it? And then we figure out, what did success look like? What did failure look like? How far away were we on the spectrum? And then why? What were the things that we encountered that we didn't account for? What were the things that we did account for? What went well? What didn't went well? And what that allows us to do is constantly be updating our standard operating procedures. We're constantly trying to improve those internal processes so that the next time we do it, we have a file on it, right? So one of the jokes in our company is we say new problems only. We don't deal with old problems. If we've already managed through it at some point, it should be in a standard operating procedure somewhere, right? And so we have a spreadsheet that we use where we have a problem, we have a list of problems. So whatever it is, that's the first column. The second column is like you're explaining it to a new hire or a toddler.
I was just thinking
this is how we fixed it.
Well, how
Yep.
great for onboarding.
It's so simple. It's so simple. And then the third column is if it's something computer related, then we'll record it like on Loom.
Yeah.
Of like how step by step to do it. So we call that the resource column. There's also phone numbers in there, emails, all the things that we use. All that stuff is in that database so that we can only focus on new problems. Like, we're a small team. We're only 4 years into business. So I'm like, guys, we need to expedite the learning curve. The best way to do that is to spend as little time as possible on old problems or repeat issues. That's how we solve it. So before action reviews, after action reviews, and then our new problem only spreadsheet that we use.
I think that the thing about the spreadsheet that is so critical is it is that last step, and it's so important for the moment, but it's also so important for the future, because I'm just thinking exactly that. I mean, oftentimes we want to move on. We don't want to document anything. We're like, okay, fine, we're done. We said only new problems, so we're done. But finish, put the little bow on it. I think I see your spreadsheet as the bow on it, because then you know what that can be? That can be a gift when you hire, let's just say, a new product manager, or you hire someone else and they come up with a question. You say, oh, hey, here it was here's how we tackled it. Here's a video on it. And this is why we've made the story going forward. And it's so inclusive of everyone. You know, it prevents the old-timey people from getting frustrated because this new person is saying the same problem. We've already been there, done that. We don't need to talk about it, right? It prevents that, right? And it helps that new person feel like they're part of the team. Like, oh, wow. And I would be super impressed if I came in and I saw that and I was like, great. I'm going to now leap off of all of this work that they did. Talk about creating something robust, sustainable, and scalable. That is amazing.
And it's a simple thing. And I learned it the hard way in the coaching world. So the coaching carousel is what they call it, where every year between usually right after bowl seasons or right after football, the national championship, up until mid-April, coaches will move around very quickly, meaning new jobs are taken. And so we constantly were losing staff members because people were moving up, they're getting new opportunities, and it happens all across the country. And so we found ourselves every year trying to figure out, how do we replace the people that just came in here? Because on a football strength and conditioning staff, we'll just use football as the easy example here, everybody has different responsibilities. So you have the director of strength and conditioning, he's the manager, so to say, and his primary responsibility is just overseeing everything. Then you have the assistant director, which was me, and then you have below that usually a group of assistants. So we had 4 or 5 people that work for us. One would be in charge of the nutrition. One would be in charge of travel plans. One would be in charge of weight room setup. One will be in charge of, all these different things. And so if you're constantly interchanging this, you can see how if there's not a system there, it could get hectic very quickly. And so I finally got to a point where when somebody was leaving, I always said, before you leave, I need your manifesto. And what that manifesto was, I want to know what it was like to be you. I want to know what systems did you like? What systems did you not like? If you could do it differently, what would you have done? Where were we the bottlenecks as the higher ups on the staff? I mean, we wanted it all. I want your manifesto. Type it up, send it to me. And then what I did is I systemized that into the spreadsheet that we're talking about now, where we could solve all these problems. And I would present the problems that they left to the new person. So when they came in, I would say, hey, here's how we do things existing. Here's some areas for improvement that the previous person pointed out. Feel free to run with these. And now I'm empowering them right off the bat to jump in and make change. Make this your own. Do it your way.
Okay, Coach Kitch, I can see why you've been so successful. That's amazing. And it takes discipline, which discipline does not start with a C, but I guess it ties into, you can tell me which C it ties to, which one it's a sub task under. But consistency, there you go. It takes consistency, and it takes that discipline to do that. And a strong, solid leader has that, because it's not easy at the times when you really just want to move on, or you want to rest, or you want to just be like everyone else. What?
And things are moving fast.
Okay. So a couple of things. One, what's up next for you aside from the PhD? We know about that. And with that, is there anything you really hoped we would cover that we haven't covered yet? Because I definitely want to make sure we get your voice out on that.
No, I think we've had fun. I could talk for days. I'm long-winded. People probably get sick of hearing me, so I'm good with what we covered. Obviously, if anyone's interested, and there's plenty more of me online. Just simple Google search will bring up, trust me, more than your fair share of Coach Kitch and what I have to say. But what's next for us? Right now we're involved in a really special program, really special partnership for us. So my brother was a two-time cancer survivor. He's 26. He's been diagnosed twice, has beat it twice, in remission now. So we partnered with the Lymphoma and Leukemia Society. So we are doing a large fundraiser for them. So we're hosting a webinar, a Coaches Academy webinar for any athletics coaches that want to learn some leadership, culture skills. We have a great lineup of speakers. I'll be headlining that at the end of the day. So that's on May 11th. And then we have coming up, man, we're going to be doing another tour. We just got off the road. So we did a 9-city tour this spring. We did our Built Not Born tour, which was awesome. We did corporate events during the day. In the afternoon, we would do a pop-up event at a local, whether it's a gym or a coffee shop or whatever. We found somewhere, we would do a pop-up event. And then that night we had a networking mixer. And so we would host that. So like Miami, we ended up going to a Marlins game. So we're going to do that again in the fall. We don't typically do one in the fall, but we're going to do one this year in the fall. So that's what's coming up. We have our summer campus tour this summer. So we'll be on the road, hitting different colleges. And then, like I said, in the fall, we'll be back in the corporate world and back in the corporate space. So we try and split it up somewhat evenly. And there's some rumors that there might be another book in the works, but that's not quite ready for public consumption yet.
Well, I will say there's I bleed Georgia Tech, so I will just say that. I'll say there's a university. There's a couple universities here in Atlanta, so head over here. Okay, as we talked about in the beginning, you've already given a couple of quotes. However, it is mandatory to give what in the moment right now is your favorite, because you're probably like me. I can think of a gazillion motivational quotes, and it's hard for me to pick just one. So what are you going to end this episode with as your favorite in the moment motivational quote?
My favorite in this moment, motivational quote would be, I'm giving myself a little bit of time to think here. You know what it is, honestly, move the dirt. So move the dirt. I had a friend of mine who always used to say life is about moving dirt. Every day there's a pile of dirt that needs to be moved from A to B. Some days you get a shovel, some days you get a bulldozer, and some days you get a spoon. But no matter what, you got to find a way to move the dirt. And, a little side story with it, my neighbor is probably 85, 90 years old. He's an old man. And he comes out every day with a bucket, and he does all his own yard work. And he brings a bucket and a lawn chair and a notebook, and he moves the dirt every single day. And I asked him what he writes in the notebook, and he said, I keep track of how many buckets I moved today.
Wow.
And so move the dirt. that's what life's about. Dude's 90 years old doing it every day. Move the dirt.
That is amazing. Well, this has been such a gift to me. I am going to put a note in it in my gratitude jar for today. So thank you so much for saying yes. I know you're super busy. Every time you say yes to something means you're saying no to something else. So thank you for saying yes to talking with me today.
Thank you so much for having me. The world needs more people like you that have platforms like this. So thank you for sharing it with me, and please keep doing what you're doing. I love it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Thank you for joining us today with your coffee and conversation. We hope you've been encouraged and learned something from today's story. To learn more about today's guest, please check out our show notes for more details. Now it's time to remember to like this episode, subscribe, and turn on your notifications to ensure you do not miss future episodes. Recovery Advocate Network envisions a world where individuals with mental health challenges receive comprehensive and effective treatment without the worry of financial burdens to themselves or their families, all without the stigmas often present in society. We are proud that every individual working with RAN does so on a 100% volunteer basis. You can support the mission by making a financial donation via PayPal or Venmo, or email donate@recoveryadvocatenetwork.org if you would like to donate items for our next fundraising auction. Please visit our website at www.recoveryadvocatenetwork.org to learn more. Now, stay in the loop about upcoming events, future episodes, and more by following us on Facebook, Instagram, Twitter X, TikTok, LinkedIn, and all major podcast platforms. As a reminder, the experiences and advice expressed in this episode are the host and guest's own personal stories and do not represent the opinions of any organization mentioned. RAN is passionate about opening the doors for all voices and experiences, not just those expressed in any particular podcast. If you want to share your experiences or expertise, we encourage you to be a future guest by emailing us at podcast@recoveryadvocatenetwork.org or submit a blog by emailing blog@recoveryadvocatenetwork.org. We also encourage you to comment on the episode so that we can continue to provide content that is most beneficial to the community. How do you do that? Visit our website at www.recoveryadvocatenetwork.org, and in the top right corner, click that comment button and comment. So listeners, what do you need to do? Pause what you're doing, subscribe, follow us. Please give us a like and a 5-star rating, write some meaningful comments, and most importantly, share these episodes with your friends. You never know whose heart you will touch, so please be a part of a reason someone has new hope today. If this episode was triggering to you, we encourage you to contact your support system, therapist, national and community support groups, the Global Crisis Text Line by texting 741-741, and/or if in the U.S., dialing 988 to reach the Suicide and Crisis Lifeline. If you're in the U.S. and need additional resources such as shelter, support group resources, transportation, food, and/or a safe, confidential path out of physical or emotional domestic abuse, please call 211 or visit www.211info.org for assistance. Now, we know you are very busy, and we are grateful that you said yes to sharing time with us today. If you stuck to our 3 C's of engagement and listened to the full episode, then visit the podcast section of our website and leave the comment about the podcast, and you'll be entered to win an autographed copy of one of the books from one of our book club series, as well as a coffee and conversation coffee mug. So thanks again. Until next time, back to your coffee.